Mhm.
Welcome back, everybody. Of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally. This is the Question Guy podcast. I'm here with Yermi and Liam
Perfect.
Kirkus. And all of
Mhm.
you should remember, all of you in the audience, of course, should remember Yermi was on my show. Oh my God, because he had quite a story to tell. But he also has lots of other stories. And this one involves how he met the lady that's sitting next to him. So let's go ahead and dive into that story because I couldn't even believe it when I heard it the first time. But we need proof, and this is proof. So where do we get started? How does this get started?
So I'm gonna let you
Mhm.
start a little bit, and then
Oh
I'll,
gosh.
I'll give the other side of the story.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I know you know the journey it took before.
yeah. So Dr. Keith, actually you were interviewing me, so thank you for that. And let's pick up where we left off. So where, you asked me, could you bring your wife on? We were talking about, how I had my personal journey and then kind of like what was that next step. So how about you lead us?
Well, what you told me, based on my memory, is that you created a checklist of exactly the person that you thought would fit into this wife category.
Hmm.
And everybody told you you were foolish, silly, and it was never going to happen. So we're working off of that. Well, we're working off of that premise. Now, the story is you're over in Jerusalem.
Well, no, at the time I was in LA, in Los
Okay.
Angeles.
Well, no, because you met her.
Yeah.
So
You
here's the
met
deal.
her in the
He had been
homeland.
in LA, and he had been,
Mhm.
going through his life journey and doing these things and getting to the place he needed to be. And meanwhile, I was in Israel. I had made Aliyah. That meant I had immigrated to Israel. I had thought that that's where the rest of my life would be lived, and that was where my journey was taking me. And so I had officially been there for a little bit. And I was, I had already had connections because I went there before I made that official move. But I had a lot of friends and a lot of connections. But when we met each other, I was still really establishing my community situation and my like hangouts, my groups and different stuff. So we actually met very at a not typical place that either of us would have shown up at.
Well,
Because,
did you do you know what he told me before? Because he was seeing every other person in that household that
yeah, so
and they
Yeah.
were all telling you that you should see him. So it's kind of a crazy story.
basically the timeline happened a little bit like actually it's this time of year. It was like
It was this time.
November-ish.
Hmm.
Because I think did we invite you for Thanksgiving? I would think it
I
was
think it
early
was
November,
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
and they were doing like these different
Hmm.
singles events and speed dating and whatever. That just wasn't my speed so much, and
Yeah.
it was not my comfort zone. And I was working and I had a new job, so I couldn't just like have the same flexibility. So all of my roommates were going to these events, and most of them went to the first one, and then they said, oh, it was so good. More went to the next one, and then it was so good. We should all go to the, kind of was one of these situations. So, and they would kind of come back and everybody share their war stories of like, oh, this guy was great. Oh my goodness, this guy was so weird. And so it was like this whole like kind of apartment, like conversation piece. And I know Yermi was one of the guys who his name kept coming up. Like, he's this really cool guy. I mean, we can't really figure him out, but he's really cool. Like, he's a really nice guy, and we should help set him up.
Hmm.
We should help, because I was
Wait,
in
who
like
said that? Who said that we should help set him up?
my roommates.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Wow.
basically, I was in an apartment it's rather large for Jerusalem. And a lot of people in the young, single scene, that like 20 to 30s or mid 40s, a lot of apartment sharing happening in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv and stuff like this. So it's very normal to have 2 to 3 roommates. I was abnormal that I had 5 other roommates besides myself. So there were 6 of us sharing like a large apartment. And so there was a lot going on there, but because we had space, we loved to host people, and we loved to have people in, and we did this routinely. And it was kind of like one of those things of like, okay, you can, you're coming, and then invite a friend. And so that way we'd have a lot of people at a table. We hosted 20 something for Thanksgiving. And so it was just a lot of fun. there were extremists too. I'm not gonna, ignore that reality, but it was had a really fun twist to it that got thank you, environment that got to happen. So we like to host and we like to have people over, and then like sometimes it would be a little devious and say, well, we should invite this person and this person because I think that they might get along and maybe they could start dating and maybe it'll be a good match, who knows. So that's where we all like, oh, he's a really great guy, but he wants to live in the States, and all of us were very happy with living in Israel, and that's where we're going to be. And so we're like, we got to set him up. Who do we know who, wants to live in America, who wants to live in California? Like, who do we know? And we're just kind of like tossing that around. And we didn't just like toss it around. Like, we actually invited Yermi to things. He never showed up.
Whoa. Wait, you're being talked up and you don't show up? Oh my gosh.
So it was like 2 or 3 times that we invited him for a meal or whatever. And each time he had a legitimate family reason that came up last minute that he couldn't, reschedule or move. Like they were so legitimate. Like his sister gave birth and they were going to have, the what's called a brit milah, the circumcision, and that has to happen at a specific timing and different stuff. It's not just like, oh well, let's move it off today because Yermi needs to go have dinner in Jerusalem. And so that happened like 2 or 3 times. And it's not that we gave up at all, it's just that New Year's Eve happened before we gave up. So I don't know. Did you want to add something to that? Like what's going on by you when you're like getting invited and back and forth?
I mean, I'm getting invited and I really want to go. And there was this one girl that was in that group, and she's like, there's this really, really good girl we want to introduce you to.
I didn't know it was
better come, like come. And I'm like, okay, like that's what I'm here for, right? And I'm making all the arrangements to go because if I'm invited, I'm gonna show up. And so I'm doing all the arrangements, and then all of a sudden, like, there was the one time I was literally on the bus, like I was on the bus going, and I get a call, and they're like, "Yeah, your sister just gave birth. Show up to the hospital," And I'm like, "Okay," And it was like literally just like one thing after another, and I'm getting frustrated at this point because they are also talking her up, And I'm like, I really want to go. Who is this like incredible, smiley, exciting, fun person? Like all the things that they were telling me about her. And I'm like, I really want to go. And I'm only going to go when I'm invited, obviously. And then I'm invited when there's like a family obligation or something like that, And it's like, it was getting frustrating at that point.
So talk to us about that checklist, because I know based on our previous conversation that you were restructuring your entire life and you just wanted to get things right this time. And so you created this model, this mental model, and this checklist of, well, if I'm going to meet somebody, I really would love these qualities. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
And how important that was?
Yeah. So just to give a caveat before that, because that ties into this. So just to give context, it was very important for me that, my mindset was at a place where 2 full people, not like half broken people, like I'm going to find my other half type of thing. Like I wanted to be like full, as like I'm coming 100% into what I would consider a relationship, and something that's going to build into a long lasting relationship. So that was one side, but the other side was also, I wanted the woman that I was going to be dating to be the same. I didn't want her to be half person, like looking for her other half,
Right.
Like 2 complete people coming with like so much to offer. That was something what I was looking for. So like Liam, for example, was building her life in Israel. One of the very first things I told her when I met her was like, by the way, if you're building your life here and this is your dream, I'm not going to be the guy who's taking away your dream. That's very, very important to me. So how that ties into the list was, to me, and the list was kind of like, here are things that let's say she potentially could say that would indicate to me that this is the right person. One of the examples was, encouraging for my dreams. Like I would assume if in my vision when I was dating somebody, we're sharing dreams, we're sharing, this is the kind of life I would love to live, and I was looking for where's their overlap. Like, do we share dreams? Do we share visions? Do we share mindsets? Do we share outlooks? So all that went into the list. So it wasn't like she has to be blonde, she has to be tall, she has to like that wasn't what it was. It was more like mindsets and like almost like discussion. I literally wrote like scenarios and discussions,
even like qualities and
qualities,
values and
right?
stuff like that.
So that was what was in the list. So yeah.
So did you have a list?
Yes.
You had a list too?
I just didn't have a 4-page list.
Okay.
A double-sided printed off list.
Well, what was on your list?
So for me, some of the things, honestly, I had come to a point where I thought that I was going to be mixing things from my list and like changing things just by the community that I was a part of and different things, that it just wasn't conducive anymore in my mind. But they were still there and I just had never done anything. Like one of the things that I personally have a value, I was raised with this, was entrepreneurship and figuring out life from a little bit, because to me it's a mindset that you come to life that, if you are a 9-to-5er, it's just a different mindset. It's not bad. It's just different. And it was a little bit different than my personal mindset. But in the community that I was hanging out with, it wasn't so much the mentality to just be entrepreneurial and figure out things. And it's like an out of the box thinking that goes along with it. So like, that's one of the things that was on my list. And when I met him, I was like, interesting. Now, granted, he was in a 9-to-5 job at the time I met him. So it wasn't like he was being, Mr. Entrepreneur at the moment. Like he wasn't necessarily acting that out in the moment of that was his main income, but his mentality was there. And that's really where he approached things. At least when we were talking and having conversations, I'm like, wow, I thought like this didn't really exist. And like, okay, interesting. I have to rethink things a little bit and I have to reevaluate. So it was one of those things that when we finally got to meet, was actually New Year's Eve. We were both, one of my roommates, we're very grateful for her to this day. And she was the one who was trying to connect us. And I didn't know it. I just thought, oh, she kept saying, yeah, you need to meet him because you'll help. And like, we can figure out somebody who he'd be good for. And so her and I actually ended up going to a New Year's Eve party. And the moment I stepped into the door, like walking up to it, I'm already like, oh, I don't know that this is my speed. This is not my crowd. This is a little, okay, this will be interesting. Definitely cultural experience here. And I'm adding things to my bucket list that I didn't have. And but we walk in the door and Walda says she God bless her, I love her so much, but she has 2 volumes and one is loud and the other is louder. And that's who she is. And she's, very okay with that. And so we step in the door and all of a sudden I hear I hear Yermi's name being yelled out across the room. She goes,
over a loud DJ.
It was a very loud room. But she had to be loud. In her defense, she had to be loud. But she goes, Yermi. And I'm like, what are we talking about? What's happening here? Like, we just stepped in the door. We just arrived. And now everybody knows. Like, I thought we were going to blend in. We're not blending. And he kind of looks up and looked like he wanted somewhere to bury his head. But we go over and we start talking, and I quickly realized that Yermi was one of the only other people in the room that night that I had anything in common with, and that I actually wanted to have a conversation with. And that just, there was a handful, I'd say there were maybe 5 of us that were like kind of chilling and whatever. And, but he was amongst that handful of people. And, when I met him with the mentality of like, okay, I've got to find out about this guy so that I can figure out what of my friends would be a good fit for him. So like, that's how I'm not.
You're just being passed off is what you're trying to do.
I am being a total blonde about the whole situation, and I'm totally oblivious to the reality of the situation. I'm just going with it. What I think is going with it. And so, we're having a conversation, and, we actually pretty quickly into the conversation came across a very controversial topic. And that, he was like, well, basically, if you think that way, then that's it. And he told me later, he basically wrote me off at that point, which I didn't know I could be written off or not, because in my mind, I was looking at him for somebody else. So I wasn't like trying to be impressive. I wasn't trying to be his ideal person or anything. I wasn't trying to be anything other than who I was. So that was kind of how we got, that's how we met.
Okay.
And then after that, we just stayed in touch and we had conversations, and
Well, where are you now geographically? As
we're still in
From
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
We're still in Jerusalem.
oh, okay, we're still there.
Yeah. So I basically, at this point, I had heard about him from like September, October. I finally met him on New Year's Eve. Like that was kind of a little bit of the time period.
Right.
And then
February is when I
I would
left.
say, when did you leave? I don't even know.
February something.
Okay.
So in February. So I'm at work one day.
Just I want to say one
yeah,
quick
yeah.
thing.
I was like, hold on, you
didn't
did
mean
your
to
part.
no, I didn't mean to like stop. But so what happened with me was that I got the same treatment, by the way. So I was not meant to be at that party. And I knew that this was going to be like a party that was completely out of my realm, not my style, not my thing. But this girl apparently was friendly with one of my friends, a guy friend. And this guy friend was driving me crazy to meet up with him over there. And he was like convincing me, like, yeah, there's this other event afterwards, but I just want to go here first. And it was kind of later on we found out that this was all planned and
A
orchestrated.
little scheming.
So
Big setup, yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm there, showed up, and I'm really supporting a buddy of mine. That's really like the way in my, so I'm standing in a corner. I'm not even like dancing, and I'm not like that's not my style, I'm standing in a corner, and all of a sudden I hear my name being yelled at the highest levels of, and I'm already trying to kind of like not make a scene and like not, and here's my name being yelled out like, whoa, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And I see that, that girl, like that lady, like literally like grabbing her by the arm
Like,
and
where
kind of like
are we?
dragging her, okay, across a dance floor. So they had to like get around. And this one is just like, and she has a smile on her face the entire time. And I'm like, wow, she has a good attitude. Like, this is cool, We got to talking, and the whole write-off thing was primarily because one of my things was she was talking about, her dream and coming to Israel and living there. And it was also very early on, as Liam was just explaining. It was also very early on. And I was like, explore your dream, like you don't even know if you want to live here or not, so
you didn't want to come blow up my dream, be like, oh,
right,
scrap your dream, come on mine. Like,
so I just did a quick like, okay, like you have to do your thing, and I respect that and I want to support that, and that's it. And that's how I just left it. And I told her even then, I was like, no, I mean, absolutely explore your dream, like explore living here, this is wonderful,
Right.
like go for it. So that's basically how that happened, and it just kind of like ended there, but we always kind of like sent like little like hello and how you doing, and little like small
share
messages.
articles.
Articles.
We shared articles, be like, oh, hey, I was reading this and this reminded me of something we talked about and I thought it might be relevant to you or whatever. So we did then we talk about the articles a little bit, like chat. Everything was like text chat. It wasn't like, I don't even, did we ever hop on a phone call?
No.
Wait, so you go back to the States and you're having a long distance relationship?
So then this happened. So February rolls around, and we had just been friends. I'm still thinking, who could I set him up with? He's still thinking I wrote her off, not realizing I'm trying to set him up with people. And so February rolls around. I don't remember what time in February. And I get a phone call, and I think you called me.
I called you that.
Or you messaged me.
No, I called you.
Did you call me?
Okay.
Well, he reached out and he said, hey, I'm going to be in Jerusalem today because I'm getting ready to leave. And like, I'm kind of saying goodbye. And I actually got my flights out today, and I'm just like, I'm, going and saying goodbye, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I think you said, could we go out, go for food or something?
Go for lunch. Yeah.
Go out for lunch. And I'm like, well, actually, I just going into my shift at work, and I have a mid shift. Like, I didn't have a morning or an evening shift. I had like this bridge shift that was half morning, half evening. So like, he would be on the airplane before I was even really done with my shift. So that wasn't going to work. I'm like, well, sorry, I work at a cafe. If you want to come eat here, like, I mean, you're welcome. Not really your speed. It's kind of like vegan, but okay. But you're welcome. And so we get off the call, whatever. And I even text him. This is how dense I was being about the situation. I texted him afterwards and I said, oh, by the way, my roommate, the person who had introduced us at that New Year's Eve party, I said, by the way, she's also in town, I think, today, because she would travel a lot. And I said, she's also in town today if you want to say goodbye to her as well. Like, here's her number. Ooh, flew right over my head.
And you're being real about this. I mean, this is
I'm being totally real
totally
about
sincere. Okay.
And totally from a good place, sincere place. I just thought he's coming to say goodbye to all of his friends that he made. And he's going back to the States. Okay, fine.
And
like
your side of this is you were interested now?
So on my side, okay, so
You're interested?
So on my side was so if you remember from the last time I said when I was being told that I had to leave the country for, you know, immigration purposes and everything, I was like, well, there's only one reason why this is happening to me. I'm going to meet that, you know, that dream wife, that ideal wife that I made for myself. And everybody was like, yeah, whatever. Good attitude, good character, like great, but yeah,
you're making the best
you know?
of a bad situation.
Exactly. So I was like, no, this is what's going to happen. So now this was all supposed to take about 8 months. I was supposed to be out of country for 8 months. By miracle, I don't know what happened, but I was accepted within 4. So so I'm going now back to you know, the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where Jewish people go to pray and stuff. I'm going to say thank you, God, for, you know, speeding up. Like, this is practically a miracle, you know. Thank you, but you know, hey, there's one thing that you kind of forgot, you know, that wife of mine,
Think you
you know,
forgot.
like what's going on here, you know? And I was
Like,
a little
that was
bit
the whole point.
yeah, so I was a little bit frustrated that, and it was like that night that I had a flight to go back. So just as I'm leaving the, like, it's like a plaza, it's like an open area. As I'm leaving the open area, I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, there was this, you know, one woman that it just never worked out, and this and that, and kind of like, and it just like it kept playing in my head. Like I never really gave it a real shot, you know, like I wrote her off very quickly, you know, all these different things. Every time I was supposed to meet her, you know, another thing came up. So I felt kind of like, let's use the word very loosely, guilty. I didn't feel guilty, but I was like, hey, you didn't give it your full, you know, you're 100%. So I was like, just give her a call, see what happens, you know. So let's go out for lunch. Let's just see what else is there, you know, and then go from there. I don't like I didn't have really a plan, you know. There was no plan.
But there was no plan, but there was no like flexibility as far as time. Like he was leaving that day. Like it was either we made lunch or we didn't get lunch. Like that was the options. So he ended up coming by the cafe that I was working at, and he's like, oh, this is the part you worked in. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, he's like, yeah, I had come a couple of weeks ago to try to see you. And they're like, who are you talking about? We don't know who you're talking about. That person doesn't work here, because it was attached to a bakery. And it was a whole different set of staff. It was like 2 different worlds, the bakery and the cafe, same name, but like 2 different entrances, 2 different kitchens, 2 different worlds. So they're like, I don't know who you're talking about. She doesn't work here. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So like a little factoid that just got thrown to the back of my head of like, this guy came asking about me. And then what was supposed to be in my mind a 10-minute conversation ended up being like
45 minutes,
30-40 minutes, something like this.
I was like super late. I was like running to the airport.
He ended up like, I don't know, getting food or something. So we just had a conversation, and it was a very efficient cafe. It's very small. And so like the kitchen was part of the bar, and it was like, think barista and cafe, vegan cafe. So it was like very tight. It was like I could still serve and do other things and have a conversation with somebody at the bar. So we had a whole conversation, and I'm like, wow, he's a really interesting guy. Like I already knew he was interesting because we'd been chatting a little bit here and there. I'm like, but he's really interesting. And it was like one of those things that he left. He's like, okay, bye. I'm going to be late. I have to get the train to go to the airport. And like, oh my gosh, I have to go get my stuff. This is crazy. So he left, he goes, and but probably in the next half hour, I get a message from him. He's like, I'm so glad I got to meet you, and I'm sorry our journey stops here. And that was when I'm like, oh, I missed it. all things
Mhm.
I missed that he was interested in me. Like I was that dense. How,
Mhm.
what if somebody just been like, hello, let me tap your shoulder here.
Mhm.
This guy's interested in you, and like realize that. But that was the moment that I was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Interesting. And so my response to him was, I'm like, hey, you don't have to be such a stranger. Like, it's not so final. If you're ever coming back to Israel, I knew his family was in Israel, so I knew he'll be coming back at some point. Like, if you're ever back in Israel and you do need a place for a Shabbat meal, which is the traditional meal we have on Friday nights, let me know. We still love to host. Like, I'm like, don't cut off communications. Like, it doesn't have to end here. And like, it doesn't have to be so final, because now I realize, okay, interesting. Now I have to consider this. And so I opened that. He went and he closed the door, and I put my foot in it. I'm like, let's just see where this might go. So it was only after that we ended up having conversations where I realized that he was actually even interested in maybe potentially pursuing me. And so it was like at that point that we started having some real serious conversations, and real, I guess that long distance dating was really, that's what it more or less started.
And
And
it just, so it did, because you were
yes,
back in the,
because now he's back in the
After a
States.
while though. But
Yeah, it was like we had conversations and different stuff. So yeah, and in the beginning was a lot of conversations and long distance, and that at that point we were having long phone calls, like really long phone calls, and really delving deep into ideologies, our values, our goals, our plans, our all those like really deep things that make up a person. And not just like, oh, what's your favorite color? Okay, I would want my kitchen cabinets to be the same too. Like it was really deep conversations. And one of the first things I ever said to him, I said, you have the most beautiful soul that I've ever met. And that was, for me, like on such a deep level that I remember talking to a mentor of mine at the time, and I said, I've just never met somebody with like, his soul is so beautiful to me. Like we really connect on this really deep level. And I just haven't met it. And the different people that I've, met or had gone out with or whatever, I hadn't met that. And so that was where it really, I think, started being a very serious contemplation, because I knew it would mean leaving Israel. I knew that from the get-go. I knew that would be part of the deal, if you want to say, if I were to allow this to go further. And it ended up being something for me. I said, I have a pretty safe bet. His family's all in Israel. So I know all the big family, celebrations will be here. So I know, he's not gonna have a problem wanting to come back once a year to come visit family. Like they're here. Like that's kind of good. And, at the time, our conversation really was like, one day, like when we retire, we would both love to retire in Israel. Like, so we had these conversations of, what would it potentially look like that I'm not giving up my dream, so to say. Like, and for me, it was just more ended up coming to a point of, I'm not giving up a dream. I'm simply trading hands for, like, I'm taking a dream I also had. I also wanted very much to be married. I also very much wanted to have a family. And what I wanted to do and be in that was, to make a positive impact in the world. That to me was the point of getting married and having a family, that we together would be a team, that we together, and then also as kids come and as a family would become, that we would be making a positive impact in the world. So I said, I'm not giving up a dream. If we choose to, go down this road together, I'm just like, I can't hold both things maybe at the same time in the same breath. And this one just has to come to prominence, and we have to figure this out. And I'm not like, we're not giving up on Israel. I'm never coming back, and I'm never going to visit. I knew that wasn't going to be the case. Like I said, it's a safe bet, dude. Like you got family there. Like you're not giving up on it as a country and as a whole. So it was definitely one of those things that we both had that same purpose for both of us. And that was even something when we had met on that New Year's Eve, so I was like, okay, so what kind of girl are you looking for? And what can I be looking out for? He's like, well, the thing that I want you to do is to close your eyes and think, if we were both together, would we be making a positive impact in the world? Would that be the thing that we were doing? So I knew that was already a core value of his, and so for me, it made sense. I'm like, but that's also how I view, a marriage is very much, we're teaming up. And in Hebrew, we call it a kiddush Hashem. It's that we're glorifying and we're bringing a positive goodness that is, sanctifying. That's a good word. Sanctifying the name of God. And that's what we're here on the earth to do, is we're supposed to elevate things and not just let things be at a mundane level. And that, I think, when we identified that in each other, was the first green flag. Everyone talks about red flags. That was the first green flag that was like, okay, this is a different conversation. This isn't just somebody that, we have the same hobbies and we like to do, read the same books. Like, this went deeper.
Well, I know you said you would have a hard stop at a certain time. Is that still a reality? I mean, are you is that part of your reality as a couple, to make an impact and to flourish, or what was the word you used? Sanctify?
Yes, sanctify
each other and God. Is that working?
Listen, I feel like it's something that you strive for in your everyday life, because every day you choose to do it. You have to. To me, when you're choosing,
but are you doing it as a couple? I mean, because that's what that was the
I
whole.
hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. 100%. I hear what your question is, but still, my answer is the same. Is I think every day we have to choose, and whether it's we're choosing to, like we were saying the other day, we're not always on the same page. We're not always in a total agreement on everything, but we do what we need to work through things in life that come up and get on the same page. And together we come and we serve our community. Together we come and we still love to host and have people over. That didn't change from our single days. And we love to make people feel included and part of community. And those are things that we do together. And I think we do them better together.
Sure.
Than we did singly. And it was something that we even did when we were engaged. We started already back then doing things. And Yermi had a friend who his wife just had a baby, and they needed some meals made. So we literally went to the grocery store together, bought all the ingredients, cooked it, and delivered it. Like, that was like something that we did together. So,
which, by the way, was a scenario that was written in my list.
That was on his list.
A real story. I actually had that written out, a scenario that a friend of mine had a baby. We went, we fed, we helped them, whatever. And for me at the time when I was writing it, I was like, this is just an example of what would look like. It literally happened in our engagement, not even in our marriage.
And I think also,
so
there are other aspect of, how everybody always says, well, opposites attract or whatever. And just the idea that very much we're strong where each other is weak, and we're there for each other when the other needs it.
Right.
And that, to me, is so empowering to live your mission, to live your purpose, to know that you have somebody who has your back in that kind of way, that at the end of the day, you can say, wow, this happened and it was so challenging. And sometimes it means that, he gives me a hug and says, oh, I hear that was really challenging. Other times that means he goes, well, can I give you a little pushback or a little feedback on that? Like, what if you tried it this way? It might be different, and vice versa. There's times he'll be like, oh, I was in this meeting and this and this and this happened. And I'll be like, well, what about this perspective? And so I feel like these kind of things that, there's a ton of communication in our relationship. There's a ton of, working on ourselves individually, personally, and then working on ourselves as a couple as well. So these things I feel like all come together. And I think that we're living more that goal now than when we were first married. Like,
I mean,
it grows.
Growing,
Like it's something that, because we work at it and we are conscious of it, and it's something that we like, it's top of mind.
I love it. I'm so thankful for the two of you to join me in conversation.
Thank you.
before we end the call, any last words to Jewish, non-Jewish, doesn't matter, to people out there trying to figure how to be a couple?
Sure.
What's the key ingredient here?
Oh, oh, key
Just
ingredient.
one, please.
I just want to say one quick thing about all of this. Like, you know, it's very important to have a like an idea, a vision, a direction. You know, that's why I wrote that list. That list was more of a direction, like here's what I want. So it made it a little bit easier on me, for example, to kind of identify, you know, the moment I met this person, right away I was able to like see, you know, where this is going and where this is leading. So the list was very important. What personally I learned from it was different areas of myself saying, just as a door opens, a door closes, a door closes, a door opens, you know, how many times in our relationship, when we were still considering on even dating, like I wrote her off, and then I went to the cafe, and then like as I'm leaving the cafe, she's giving me like 3 other names of people I should go see, and I'm like, clearly she's not interested in me. So I text her, I'm like, sorry, this didn't work out, you know. So another door closes, and then she realizes, oh, like, oh my gosh, this guy's actually after me. So she reopens the door, and such is life, that life is this kind of like ebb and flow. This, you're facing these challenges and you're overcoming them. But one thing that really, at some point, we said, when I actually proposed to Liam, I actually asked her, you know, I didn't say, will you marry me? You know, I literally asked her, I said, will you join me on this journey of making this world a better place? Will you be my partner in that? That's literally how I proposed to Liam. And to me, that's the clarity, and that works in business, that works in every area of your life. Have that clarity and just like really go with that clarity, despite the, you know, ins and outs. So I think that's the one lesson, Jewish or not, or anybody should take from there.
Can I share this one?
Sure. Yeah.
So something that we were working on the other day was that, you know, having real relationships. And this is something that, you know, we were talking about and been working through, and it's for us, these are the bedrocks of our relationship. And it's respect, encourager, attentive, and loyal. That when you have a real relationship, you respect the other person, you encourage them, you are an encourager for them, you are attentive to them, their needs, their wants, their desires, their dreams, their goals, and you are loyal to them. So that, I think, is something for us that, you know, we very much live that as the bedrock.
That's what we call
that.
real relationships.
But let me go ahead and end this call. And so for those of you who are watching and listening, I'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks.